I was listening to the new Lovejoy album the other day, and here, I'll just show you before you go any further.
Say my name in a sleep.
And then, in a completely different song,
You're keeping a dark secret, but you're talking in your sleep.
that's not even the biggest piece of evidence we have that links literally every Lovejoy song from both EPs to the same continuous story, which follows the same plotline that, if explored properly, can answer the questions raised by every single cryptic Lovejoy lyric, like, for example, the most infamous Lovejoy line of all time.
Stop. 'Cause why'd you have to kill my cat?
Who killed the singer's cat here? I have the answer to this question and a bunch more, but to properly understand it, we need to go back to where this all started. First EP, first song, Taunt. Also, there are a lot of heavy topics discussed in this video, so I've added little cards that will drop down from the top of the screen like this to display trigger warnings and where to skip to avoid them. I'm also not trying to get political with this theory in any way, but given the nature of Lovejoy songs, politics will definitely have to come up. Okay, so in this song, we're introduced to two of our three main characters. I'm going to give them names so it's easier to follow, but I don't have an actual reason for choosing any of these names for each character. Our singer, who I'm going to call Sam, and his current girlfriend, who we'll name Felicity. Sam and Felicity both live somewhere around London and have fairly monotonous, unfun lives. They're not doing well financially at all, and thus are constantly on edge and constantly working, occasionally drowning their sorrows in alcohol. They live together, and Sam has a cat that he adopted years before he met Felicity. The two got together around the time they finished university, having met at a common workplace, and Felicity is, to put it lightly, an extremely bad significant other. It implies that she's entitled, stuck up, terribly impulsive, and also apathetic towards Sam in most situations. And that's without even considering this line.
One day I know that you will be there.
One day I know that you will be there, implying that Felicity hasn't been there for Sam at all in the past, that he has had to, in his words, time and time play the empath, time and time be Felicity's emotional support without her reciprocating in any way. Sam knows that the relationship is toxic, to say the least, and even talks about it, saying later in One Day itself,
To be before I found one life turned to.
two before I found one life turned two. Here is referencing before Sam found that he was managing not just his own life, but also Felicity's as well. One life turned two. Felicity enters Sam's life and instantly starts causing havoc, managing to get into a car accident with Sam's car. And you'll see why it's specifically a car accident later in the video. This ties into another lyric in such a cool way. And in said accident, ends up killing Sam's cat. Okay, question answered then, right? Felicity kills Sam's cat. Big whoop. But wait, this story gets a lot more interesting with the next song from Are You Alright? And it's all because we're introduced to our third and most interesting character of all, a politician who we're going to call Charles. Charles is an extremely interesting character of the story for one main reason. As a character, he's fundamentally different to Sam and Felicity. He also has a reason behind his name, but we'll get to that in a second, don't worry. In Sex Sells, we learn that after a while being with Sam, Felicity cheats on Sam with Charles, who is, as we learn later, rich, powerful, and a member of, and again, I'm not trying to get political here, this is just what the songs literally say, the British Conservative Party, running for a position of power somewhere in London. Sam, on finding out about this arrangement, tries to extort money out of Charles because he's both rich and a politician. A scandal like this could ruin Charles's career, and Sam tries to take advantage of that for his own personal gain. And this is where it's really hammered home to us that there are no good guys in this story. There is no one character that I can show you and say without a doubt that they've always had good intentions at heart or that their actions are morally right or justified. Everyone is in the wrong here. Anyway, after finding out about Felicity and Charles's relationship, she's for Sam anymore, and we see him grow more and more apathetic towards Felicity as time progresses, but still being forced to live with her because of money issues, and the fact that Charles can't support her in any way without raising suspicion and potentially being caught. There's also a slight reference here where we learn Charles's name,
Singing Charles, we ain't gonna hurt you.
to the fact that perhaps this deal, the extortion, put Charles on his guard and removed some of the excitement and fun that came to both him and Felicity through their relationship, starting a downward spiral that we only see continue later in the EP. Anyway, we then move on to model buses, because the order of the songs in the EPs isn't the order in the timeline, and for model buses we find out a lot more about Charles. This song is Felicity talking to us, the viewer, about Charles's career and his relationship with her, and in some places even contrasting it to her relationship with Sam. We learn that the accident that killed Sam's cat got Felicity's license taken from her, hence the emphasis on other forms of transport, and this is what I mentioned earlier.
Let's go, bus, let's go, boy.
see that Felicity desperately wants to leave her relationship with Sam, with the words "get me out of here" being consistently repeated throughout the song. This then leads us to the actual breakup. In the first song of Pebble Brain, Sam and Felicity finally stop dating but keep talking to each other, and it's very clear from the start that Felicity, being used to leeching off of Sam, is not faring well in her relationship with Charles and already wants to go back. She's still talking to Sam for reasons that'll become obvious by the end of the video, and it's clear to both of them that she still misses their old relationship, even bringing up the first lyric I mentioned at the start of the video, talking about Sam in her sleep. Charles, being as rich and powerful as he is, has plunged Felicity into a life she knows nothing about, without any knowledge of the obscure rules of so-called high society, which reflects poorly on her, making her feel like she doesn't belong, which is one of the factors that encourages her to keep talking to Sam, who she can obviously relate to more. We also see the effect it has on Charles's image as a whole from this line,
"Oh, what a shame for the people of no community."
And we see from this line,
"You know that the chase is through."
Felicity is also no longer excited by the relationship, that the chase is over her. She has no feelings left for Charles, but has to keep up the pretense of having them after she abandoned her entire old life to be with him. Actually, that's not 100% true. You see, there's one thing Felicity didn't abandon, and it was her job. Charles, or really Charles's peers, didn't like the idea of her living off of Charles's success for whatever reason, and so we come to concrete. Since Sam and Felicity still work at the same place, they're forced onto the same bus together, with Felicity not being allowed to drive a car thanks to the accident, Sam needing to spend frugally because of money problems. Concrete is a song that, in essence, if this was a musical, let's say, Sam sings to Felicity on the bus ride every day, to and from work. If he had it his way, Felicity wouldn't be as seemingly comfortable as she is now, and would be, well, I'll let him say it. This is also where Sam starts to learn more about Felicity's relationship with Charles, her unhappiness, and at the same time tries to move on from her as a partner. He then finds, or at least seems to find, someone else he likes, and Felicity finds out that Sam has, for the first time since she left him, been with someone else. This leads to an outburst on the night bus that they take back from work.
And yet, all this over a kiss. You weren't there, why are you pressed by this?
And Felicity ends up getting kicked off the bus at Sam's stop, having to ask Charles to pick her up from Sam's house. Charles, being the way he is, that is to say, arrogant, it's not directly implied, but I think that can be gathered from context, forgets about this completely, leading to Sam telling Felicity outright that Charles won't offer her the emotional support that he once did. And Charles not coming and forgetting Felicity is what these two lines signify, which are from Perfume, a song that takes place on the same night and which is narrating the same set of events from a different perspective with new information.
It's 3:45. It's 3:45. The taxi's not arrived. I don't think that he's coming.
That's 12 hours in between there where Charles completely forgot about Felicity, showing us that both Sam and Felicity got an extremely poignant and probably rose-tinted reminder of what their lives were like before Charles, a reminder that only grew in its effect over the 12 hours as Charles' apathy became more and more apparent, a reminder that serves as a catalyst for the later events of the story. We then see some more character development, or rather character progression, in Perfume, where we learn that Sam, the main singer of most of these songs, might actually be on the LGBT spectrum, bisexual or something similar, as he can see the appeal of Charles as a partner. In fact, there's a cut draft of the original Perfume lyrics that supports this theory even further, but since they were cut, we won't consider them. I've linked a Tumblr post in the description that supports this theory and ties into my theory fairly well, and it's a great read for after the video. Anyway, we learn a lot of important things about Felicity's character from this song. One, that she felt like Sam, her ex-boyfriend, was a policeman, in that he was extremely controlling and borderline manipulative from time to time, once again restating that there are no good guys in this story. We also find out that the only reason Felicity got together with Sam was because everyone around her seemed to be doing the same thing, and
She was in the dust, darling, life was streaming past. So she learned to lie, she learned how to pretend.
effectively telling the audience that Felicity never really loved Sam, but in the same breath, also saying that the reason she can't get over Sam is because he's not a prick, because no matter what he does, and especially in comparison to someone like Charles, he's been nothing but nice to her. And so we move on to the most raw song of the album, The Fall. This entire song is Charles ranting to Felicity, showing her the world from his point of view. He's completely disconnected from Felicity's existence, implying that her poverty is a choice, amongst other things, and is generally insensitive to nearly all of her problems and her way of life in general. There's also this bit of the song.
But we don't know how many lives it took, no, they'll never know what you knew.
Which essentially uses the cliffs of Dover, a popular day tripping destination from London, to show the night and day difference in Charles and Felicity's mindset. One sees it as a marvelous view, whereas the other one only remembers it as the place where they contemplated suicide. Charles also takes antidepressants, and it's implied that they're for sport, because the rest of life has become dull for him, becoming incredibly rich and consistently exposed to other pleasures. The ending rant, however, is perhaps the best summary of Charles's character one could have. Charles shows us that he feels like he rules the world he gazes upon with apathy, with the grey stenciled buildings that contain countless lives being nothing more than characters in his story. He doesn't see the people he exploits as human. He even says this.
Would do something, but wasn't also at my fault. 'Cause I'm so high, my brain can't even look at the floor.
Basically saying that he knows he could help, but he doesn't want to put in the effort. It doesn't seem to matter to him, because it doesn't feel like he could ever be in that situation, like he could ever become poor. When you're that high, your brain can't even look at the fall. Finally then, we have It's All Futile, It's All Pointless, which surprisingly kind of wraps up our story. The basic premise of this song is that it's Sam, the closest thing this story has to a main character, reflecting on the entire story with Felicity, where he came from and where he is now. He's talking to Felicity, and it's set a good amount of time into the future after the events of the rest of the EPs, and he now has a family of his own, whereas Felicity is still stuck with Charles, doing what she always said was her goal.
And you're exactly who you wanted to be.
The song continues with Sam and Felicity both getting closer, reminiscing more and more and confessing that neither ever really stopped thinking about the other, that in the end what they felt for each other was, if not real, more than what they have now, which is especially hammered home by this line, also a reference to another bit of Wilbur's music, Maybe I Was Boring.
You held his hand, it felt like flying. Now he's just another man.
We learned that despite their horrible relationship, Charles continues to plan for a future with Felicity, and this line,
His knife in a wound, he's a suture.
implies that Charles is desperately trying to patch up their relationship but has continued to fail at every turn. We then see Sam and Felicity finally get back together to try and feel something again, anything to make them feel less numb. They abandon their normal lives to chase this dream again and getting caught up in the moment, and this is portrayed in the fact that the lyrics say eat those kids, with a lot of music masking it. The emotions are making it seem worth it to give it all up, making both Sam and Felicity feel like, well... And at the end, they even talk about using a device called a sextant, a device that's used to find directions to try and get their lives back on track. Now, wait, that's the end of the story, but before we end the video, I have one last thing I want to share with you guys, some food for thought, if you will. You see, as I was scripting this video, there was a development with the Wilbur ARG. Nope, not that Wilbur ARG, that was confirmed to not even be a thing on stream the other day. I'm talking about the editor Wilbur ARG, which has been dormant for ages now. The clue, however, references in specific a cat. Given the thumbnail of this video, you can see where I'm going with this, and it's very interesting to say the least. I'll leave a link to a Google Doc with the clue in the description as well. If you enjoyed this video, you'll probably also enjoy this video I made about the connection between Wilbur Soot's other music. Subscribe!